Go get your coffee and join me for GHC Coffee Break this morning. Billy Morris from Georgia Highlands College, one of my favorite people at Georgia Highlands. Don't tell anybody, but get your coffee and we'll be right back.
Your life is filled with opportunities to show the world you can take charge. It's waking up each day with a mission. It's working each day toward a goal. It's choosing to rise. It's charging forward with a purpose. It's changing the course of your life and taking charge of your future. If you're ready to be a Take Charger, enroll at Georgia Highlands College today.
Welcome to GHC Coffee Break. I said one of my favorite people at GHC Coffee Break. He really is. And I say that seriously. Billy and I have known each other for a long time, and we had a very good mutual friend, Steve Burns, one of our colleagues and friends. Steve died 2000 and was it 2000, 2001, something like that. But Billy and I used to have offices in classrooms right next to each other, and so we got to see each other a lot.
We did.
But you know, we're kind of on the opposite ends of the campus now, and I don't get to see you as much, so I really do miss you. I hope you know that.
I do, and thanks for having me this morning.
Well, I'm excited for you to be here. Billy, October is Energy Awareness Month, and before the show started, we kind of chit-chatted a moment that years ago I took a class on environmental studies, sociology, environmental studies, and it was in the 90s, so people were just beginning to realize or maybe acknowledge that energy is finite, is not infinite. We tend to think, we're always going to have energy. It's infinite, you know, infinity and beyond. But unfortunately, it's not. And I know just enough about it to know that you're one of the experts, at least in our community. And so I'm excited to hear what you have to teach me this morning.
Well, thanks, Susan. You're kind. I'm not an expert, but I've dabbled and have some personal experience with various energy forms. And you're right. Much of our energy is finite, particularly the fossil fuel energy that we've become dependent on as a society and really global population. Those resources are limited, and we're consuming them at an exponential rate. And so that is not sustainable. That can't go on forever. But thankfully, there are other energy sources that are infinite. Sun and wind power. Both of those are, of course, renewable resources, and we can take advantage of them. Now, whether or not they can meet the energy needs of a growing population in our society is a different question.
Yeah, that's true.
You're right. So there needs to be a political and economic will to convert to those alternative energy sources, and a critical mass reached, and I just don't think we've gotten there yet, although great strides have been made in the last decade. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you get every now and then those perks, I guess, on taxes or this, that, or maybe I know sometimes the Home Depot in different places, Lowe's or whatever, will say, oh, these energy savers or Georgia Power or Scanner, or whichever the popular energy sources are. But the reality is, I'm not sure exactly how motivated people are, how easy accessible they are, how cost effective they are. You know, there's a lot of things that I'm still not sure people are really gravitating towards. And you said political. I think that's another big issue, is that, you know, for a little while they were offering incentives for the electric cars, but then when you turned around a year later, it was almost de-incentivized. Is that a word? But you know, the incentives went down, and of course we had electric cars for a very short window. Then they kind of came back, but they're really not back. So that, you know, it seems like it's this push me pull you thing going on with it.
Yes, it is. And I've been convinced for a long time that we won't have that will as a country or as a culture, as even humanity, until there's economic drivers behind it, until we have to pay the true price of fossil fuel energy, which is not just the cost of what it takes to mine coal or to pump oil, but it's the environmental cost with things like climate change and all of the troubles that brings ahead. That has to be factored into the true cost of fossil fuel energy, and that's just not the case right now. So it will take everything. It will take appliances that consume less power. It will take energy efficient heating and air systems. All of those things are needed in the mix to bring down our dependence on finite energy sources, not just one thing.
Yeah, like you said, it's not just one thing, and I think that's part of it. It's not just one thing.
Right. So we find ourselves, those of us who are really interested in this and want to make changes, we often find ourselves swimming upstream and fighting a battle that's really not fair, because it's really not about whether or not we can substitute renewable energy resources for non-renewable energy. We can do that. We have technology to do that, but we're not accustomed to. It's a behavior change that is the difficult part, and I'm sure you'll agree, modifying behaviors is one of the hardest things to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in the past, I've been a proponent of change and sustainability initiatives, and I've talked and listened and met with people, and we've had great conversations and good things have come out of it. But in the end, what I've determined is that the changes that I can make that are the most significant really are in whatever sphere of influence that I have control over. And I think that's true for all people in any endeavor. If you just make the changes that are within your sphere of influence, then maybe they will catch on somewhere else. So lately, the past couple of years, I've been doing a lot of things, even the last 10 years, doing things in my own personal life, at my own home and property to make what changes that I can. And thankfully, I've got the lectern to stand behind and describe those changes to the students that I'm honored to be with every semester. And sometimes the light comes on for them, and you never know how the ripples might move on across the pond over time.
Oh, absolutely. I've had, and I refer a lot of my students to your geology classes, just FYI, especially when you do the summer trip to Wyoming.
Thank you.
But I hear influences that you have that the students listen, so that's a good positive. I know that you do a lot of things in your class also that are surrounding energy, I believe, that you talk about as well, because you do study the minerals and the fossils.
Right. In the geology class, we got the opportunity to address non-renewable resources, fossil fuel resources like coal and petroleum, because they come out of sedimentary rocks. And so I always include a component of energy use in my geology course. I'm going to be teaching an environmental science course next semester, so we'll delve much more deeply into all of these aspects. And one thing that I've done this year in my own home is install a solar array. I installed 32 solar panels, which produce a significant amount of energy, and in fact we have reduced our electric bill by 1/3, and we're going to our projection is to zero that electric bill out. Now obviously I've got the expense of a solar array, and so the economics are right at this time. There's still a 30% federal tax credit on solar arrays, so I'll be able to deduct 30% over 5 years from my taxes and reduce the installation cost in that way, which really puts it into the realm now of being competitive with energy prices. So we'll have more on that later. I've got a little app that I can carry on my phone and see what the energy production is at any given time, and I've got that pulled up here if maybe you folks want to see that. The app connects to the solar array and it shows me what I'm producing.
Now this is at your home?
This is at my house, right?
Okay.
It shows me what I'm producing in blue. This is actually yesterday's view.
Okay.
And then in orange is what I'm consuming.
Oh.
So as long as I have more dark blue than dark orange, I'm on the net positive side of energy use. When you can carry this in your pocket and look at it throughout the day, it makes you much more aware of how long you're running that air conditioner.
Yeah, because that's...
Am I using the big oven when I could be using the smaller oven? I can see when my wife plugs in her electric car to recharge. You get a really close view in 15-minute intervals of your energy consumption. And this is something that most of us just don't think about on a day-to-day basis,
Well,
much less
no.
15-minute increments. But when you're vested, when you got skin in the game in forms of greenback dollars in the solar array, then I've got a lot of incentive to lower my consumption and hope that the sun shines.
Oh, absolutely. And well, okay, I'm going to back up again a second. You said you have an electric car?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's my wife's project.
Okay.
She has a Nissan Leaf. It's a 2015, and it turns out if you go back a couple of years on the used electric cars, you can really get some good deals. It's got
Okay.
about a 90-mile range, which is not good for traveling out of town, but it's perfect for running around in town.
Mm-hmm.
It costs about 1.5 cents, 2 cents per mile to drive
Okay.
at current energy costs. So when we talk about fuel efficiency in cars, we normally refer to it in miles per gallon.
Right.
Well, we're not using gallons in an electric car, so you have to think about it in different ways. So it's a cost per mile. As a comparison for that, I have a little diesel Volkswagen, and I get about 45 miles per gallon, and that translates at $3 a gallon. That translates to somewhere around 2 to 3 cents per mile for me to drive. So I'm spending 2 to 3 cents per mile to drive my little diesel at 45 miles per gallon, and she's spending about 1.5 cents per mile to recharge her little electric car. So it's about half the cost of a diesel-powered high efficiency car. If you're looking at a car that gets 20 miles per gallon, then you're paying much more per mile than you would for an electric car. So she's been happy with it.
Okay. Yeah, we looked into that a few years ago. I actually have a smart car. It's still it has to take the premium gas, and it is still gas, but I get about 40 miles a gallon.
Oh, great.
Not 45. And of course, that even leads us to another question, since we are talking about the environment, and we'll still go back to energy on our second segment. We have a couple minutes left in this segment. But, you know, what the environmental damage, diesel versus non-diesel, you know, of course, we know electric would definitely be less environmental damage than either one of our fuels that we're using.
Well, it depends on how your electricity is made. If your electricity is coming from a coal-fired plant, then you have to factor that cost in. If your electricity is coming from a solar array, then obviously it's much cleaner than if it's coming from hydropower. That's relatively clean. So you got to go all the way back to the source of those electrons that are recharging your electric car.
You know, and these are things that most of us, I'm going to say because, you know, I didn't even think about that part. You know, I'm thinking about this little, and I think that's it. There's so many little nuances when you even begin this conversation that the average person that hasn't done the research and that hasn't had those conversations that you're already having really even have thought about. And that's one reason why I was really excited. I said, as much as it's about educating our community, which I'm hoping this definitely educates our community, but I was being kind of selfish this morning. I was like, I wanted to learn more about it myself, because this is something my husband and I have just kind of teetered around over the years and said, you know, we'd like to do this, but, you know, what's the feasibility of doing this?
Well, the time is now. We waited I wanted to install a solar array when we built the house, but the price points were not there. And but the time is now. The window is still open with federal tax credits. The efficiency in solar panel manufacturer and their production is as good as it ever has been, and the price is as low as it ever has been for solar.
Is the installation difficult?
It depends. We have a ground mount installation. The ground mount is on steel poles that are set into the ground, and that installation is super simple.
Did you do it, or did you
No,
have someone?
I had a contractor to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, the roof mount is a much different situation. Obviously, you're working on steeper slopes, and there's just other factors that come into play on a roof mount. First of all, your roof has to face in the right direction.
Yeah.
Before you could consider that. So. Yeah, there's some considerations. But back to your point about understanding and a knowledge. You're right. People don't think about these things very often. We walk into the room and flip the switch on. We go out to the car and crank it up. And these conversations that we're having take intent, and they take some work really to do the research to find out if it's right for you, and if it's, you know, if it makes dollars and cents for individuals. So, and this is why having a sustained conversation about it and reach consensus with a group of people to do something is so hard.
Right.
Because everybody brings a different situation to the table and different levels of understanding.
Well, and I will talk about that when we get back. Get your coffee. We'll be right back with GHC Coffee Break.
The color in my garden keeps the pink in my cheeks. I was very independent until I could take care of myself. I fell and I had to have Meals on Wheels. They're my savior. My name is Lola Silvestri. America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Welcome back to GHC Coffee Break. This is a great conversation. Billy, we were talking as we were leaving the last segment about the energy, the environment, and it is both. You know, yes, it's Energy Awareness Month, but I think that when we talk about energy, we also talk about our environment, because they work hand in hand, at least in my opinion.
Yes.
Whatever that's worth. But let's get a little bit more about, because I like the idea. My husband and I like to do things ourselves if we can. He actually did create a water heater, I guess, per se, for our pool. We have an above ground pool, and my daughter likes the water very warm, and so he just kind of put regular hose, wound it around on the roof, put it in a box, and back into the pool. So it was this constant circulation as long as the pump's on, and we would run the pumps during the day. And so it circulated, and it probably made a 5 degree, roughly, I'm just guessing.
That's great.
Difference. And it was something we did ourselves, or I can't say we, he did ourselves. Didn't cost us anything other than to buy the hose, and it's continually working when the pump was working. We felt pretty, or he felt pretty proud of himself. I felt proud of him.
So, sure, absolutely.
Little step. Convenience, yeah, because it was just a pool, you know, but it was something neat. And he said, well, I would like to see about panels. And I said, well, you know, guess what? I'm going to have somebody on my show. So, you know, there's an expense, of course, up front for getting the panels, getting the installation. You talked about having the sun. I said, well, you know, we're lucky in Georgia. We do have enough sun.
Sure.
I mentioned to you I'd gone out to traveled across country, going to Texas and New Mexico, and had seen a lot of people with the winds, the windmills. They're not in the classic way of windmills you used to think of, but you know, the triple windmills.
Right.
What do you call them?
3 blades.
3 blades. And they were like cotton fields used to be around here. You know, they were whole, just acres and acres of them. We don't have the wind to sustain in here,
Afraid not.
but we do have the sun.
Sure.
We have enough sunlight that would probably, for the most parts, I mean, we probably have some dark days, but in winter, but we do have that. So some other ideas and thoughts.
Well, people need to start small. I think it's such a big, complicated issue, and that many people get turned off, I think, or give up on their ability to do anything or make a real change. But if you just take baby steps, it's well known. You know, the way to accomplish a big task is to break it down into small steps, and we've got a huge task in front of us as humans with regard to climate change. The thing that we need to do the most is reduce the carbon footprint that we're putting on the planet. That's the number one most important thing. So the way you reduce carbon footprint is to slow down the use of fossil fuels, coal and petroleum and natural gas. So where we can gain efficiencies in any one of those areas, whether it's electrical components or appliances or the demand that our house places on the grid, particularly for coal-fired electricity, that's helpful. Reduction, reduce use. The degree which we can gain efficiencies with energy efficient automobiles, so higher gas mileage automobiles, smaller cars, even electric cars or electric gas hybrids. As we said in the earlier segment, every little thing that we can do along the way will contribute towards the whole. So reducing our carbon footprint, the use of fossil fuels is, I believe, in my opinion, is the number one most important problem that we're facing right now.
Okay.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, has just come out with a recommendation I heard on the way in this morning that we're headed towards 3 degrees of global temperature rise.
Oh, I'm thinking of October, it's like 90 degrees.
Well, of course, right. And the IPCC has already said that we need to shoot for a 2-degree, and this latest report this morning that says no, by 2050 we need to have 85% of our energy coming from renewable resources like solar and wind, where only about 20% of it is coming from those sources right now, and we need to absolutely put a hard limit on average global temperature at 1.5 degree rise, which is half of where we're headed. So we need to make changes, and we need to make them now. Otherwise, 90-degree October and 90-degree November days are going to be common. Late season storms, more destructive, more serious weather events, such as these heavy rains that we've seen. And it's not just us in the United States, it's globally. And all of these things are due to the changing climate. There's really no question or significant dissent on whether climate change is real. It is, and to the extent that we contribute to that through CO2 emissions, we need to dial that back. So anything that an individual can do to help that is helpful. So that's operating within our own small sphere of influence, personal decisions that you make in your own life. If people are so inclined and have the podium to do so, then a further reach is definitely helpful. So I would advise people to do what they can to reduce their fossil fuel use, whether through electricity or automobiles, and encourage other people to do the same. Hopefully we'll reach a critical mass where enough people are making these changes to make some real significant difference and turn around some patterns that we've fallen into. But again, it comes back to these behavioral changes, which are the hardest sorts of changes to make.
Well, and I think we've gotten in such a habit, as you would say, in behavioral change of this is, we don't give it a second thought to flip on a light and the light automatically comes on. We don't give it a second thought that we turn on the car and it cranks unless there's something wrong with it. Okay, what's wrong with the car? I put gas in, I did. We don't give it a second thought.
Right.
And our to leave lights on.
And why should we give it a second thought if we don't see an immediate negative consequence from
right.
that? And we don't. It's put off into the future.
Oh yeah.
But the future's coming at us pretty fast right now, and that's the nature of exponential change. Is that the change is coming, but the change comes faster and faster until it's too late to do anything about the change. So those are the sorts of things that we're looking at right now, and it's just easier to pretend they don't exist, I'm afraid.
Well, and even water consumption. I get a little frustrated, and this is going to be a very rudimentary example, but people have become very complacent and lazy to the point of that a lot of systems in schools and other places have put automatic flushers in. And if you ever notice and go into places that don't have automatic flushers, kids are not being taught the simple thing of flushing toilets. Because of, I look at it, laziness. And I think some of this other stuff we're talking about with energy is laziness. We don't take the effort to do things that would make a difference. Instead of, we would rather fix a piece of technology or fix something that does it for us.
Right.
Am I kind of...
Right. No, I agree. And continuing with your thoughts on water use and toilets, the toilet is the #1 water user in our houses. The #1. But there are components that can be installed in our toilets right now that reduce that tremendously. So there's one simple thing to do right there. The automatic flushers. It's a real thorn in my side.
Oh, thank you.
There are bathroom stalls that I use on a daily basis at my work that flush 3 or 4 times when one would do.
Yeah.
So there's a huge waste right there that could be fixed.
So
Small things, just small things
yeah.
that people take control of or power over or willful intent to make the change in, they all add up.
Yes, and you're right. It's just the simple things, and making those adjustments. But water, gas, electricity, those are the 3 main things. Am I missing something probably of energy sources and energy usage? You said, you can also use water for energy. So
we have a great example of that in Floyd County with the Rocky Mountain Hydropower Project. It's a super example of how hydropower works in conjunction with other fuel sources. So over at Rocky Mountain, there's a lake on top of that mountain that stores water, and at peak demand in the afternoons when you and I get home and we begin to do our evening chores, turn on the oven for supper, turn down the air conditioner to cool off the house, that's a peak demand for electricity. And so Oglethorpe Power, who runs the Rocky Mountain Project, can open the gates and allow water that's stored up high to flow down through turbines, spin them, and generate electricity, which then they sell at a premium price because demand is highest then.
Okay, so see, there's something else
At night, when we're asleep, nobody's using electricity. Electricity is cheap. They buy it back from a coal-fired plant or some other plant and use it to turn around the turbines and pump it back and store it again for the next day.
See, awesome. That's something I learned. I didn't realize we did that. Again, I really appreciate, Billy, all that you've given us some hints. I hope people will take this opportunity to use this information. I know I will. I'm going to tell my husband about some of the stuff we've talked about. I really believe that we can make a difference, one light at a time, one flush at a time. And thanks for enlightening me, no pun intended. Get your coffee. We'll be right back with GHC Coffee Break.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to GHC Coffee Break. To finally to end our show, Billy, thank you again. And just in like 30 seconds or less, is there something you would like to leave our audience with to save energy?
Thanks, Susan. I've enjoyed being here. It's been a fun chat. I always enjoy talking with you. I would go back to what I've been advising all along, is find some small ways that you can make a change in your own life and then share them with other people. All
right. It's all about sharing. It's all about spreading the word. So until next time on GHC Coffee Break, have a good one and save that energy.